Carolina G. is the Masseuse. Chapter Mental Massage. The greatest part of massage is its artistry, and all art is like religion has always been, personal. Not everyone can value a specific piece or part of a piece, but the existence of the piece's importance is generally based upon personal beliefs, weighed or valued by the eyes of the beholder. You become the scale. The way you value will rise and peak through having personal knowledge of or to the artist. Love is art, but one must believe in truth and love in order to practice or conquer all hatred and hurt by not becoming a part of it or responding to it with more hatred or hurtful actions. Hatred is like a seeping, moving glob of dark destruction, and if it touches you and you aren't strong in your stance of living in love and light, it will overtake your mind and your body, quickly, making you hurt yourself and others in many clever ways. The path is wide, tremendous, and its favorite way to destroy is to make you hurt those you love the most and then keep them away from you by making you keep yourself away from them. But to see this truth clearly, one must hold an image or idea in the mind of an all-loving person, a base for comparison, kinda in the same way that we must each individually decide upon the importance of a piece of art, beyond the dependence of another stating that it holds such and such value, because then it would become their idea and not uniquely yours, which would mean your personal relationship with it is dependent upon another's view. In this way, we can know the value because it's all in how you hold it. The scales are all personal and can only be based upon a personal set of chosen beliefs. Some hold Buddha and all his known practices, words, and or actions as a part of their lives. They may or may not live completely in replication to his level of Zen, but they do follow in that direction, attempting to think and act like he did. And though this man maintains many positive practices, I do not personally agree with them and so choose not to follow. Still, I recognize the gentility and peace those whom practice it are attempting to achieve, and I see them with love. I can love them regardless of my personal choice to not look at him as my teacher of utmost perfect love, because I appreciate who people are, not who they want to be like. In my observation on the behavior of people via personal interaction or pass-by interpretations, documentaries, public television, or radio shows, etc., as well as my own life, I notice as people we lead each other and make decisions within our own societies or religions as a whole, sharing our views of love for things instead of people, valuing negative things, fallible things. Valuing a thing is the process of practicing a form of worship, and the God I see most people worshiping can only create obvious outcomes of fear, pain, imprisonment, control, or slavery. It's all very self-destructive, and self-destruction by making others into weapons against yourself will always be successful in its attempts when love is not the focal point. These outcomes and consequences are catastrophic, and though most of us don't know how negative we truly are behaving or how to stop making choices and decisions that inevitably make our own lives suffer, we don't believe a beautiful life exists, let alone can even happen for us. Though we can see that some people here in this reality live very beautiful lives, depending upon what we think beauty is, we cannot grasp the possibility that we can achieve this joy as well. But first we must understand that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and what you think a beautiful life looks like may be focused upon physical or visual attractions and possessions, and that's a very dark view of beauty. A blinded view. But when you can't know that you don't know that you cannot see, you won't know that you're blind, especially if you believe we're all helplessly blind and nothing matters, or no one matters to your mind, because a beautiful life to one with this way of thinking, only seeing with physical eyes, will look for comforts and riches, laziness and ease, non-work, thinking that the rich who no longer have to work are those with beautiful lives. But once again, one's view of a beautiful life versus another's view and opinion is going to be based upon a chosen set of beliefs. Though society leads everyone, we each choose whom to serve daily, And someone who has chosen to die within the dark glob works to maintain a completely taken over mind, and they have fully succumbed to accepting that goodness is badness, and now they think the dark is the light, seeing things backwards. I recognize that many people with this taken over mind frame blame God for their lives without even having a slight thought that their unhappiness or lack of joy could possibly be from their own decisions, not realizing that even the tiniest of decisions weigh upon us daily. We must recognize that God is still with us and attempting at all moments to influence our sight once again. Even psychopaths whom have no emotions are taught what love is by actions. That's why most psychopaths become murderers if abused. They become what is impressed into them, whereas a person with emotions can become damaged but not end up wanting to impose it on another. Still, some psychopaths become politicians whom seem to want to help organize the world based upon separating out the dangerously negative people into prisons, which are supposed to help them learn to see somehow. But just like regular people, politicians can be just as murderous, and most are allowing the privatizing and capitalizing on of prisoners and their ill behavior and actions towards others. It's a spiraling dark vortex of non-loving interactions, and I don't completely agree with the treatment of people put into prisons and suggest we begin to change, or we'll continue the cycles of abuse we know exists. I trust in the possibility of goodness within people who want to help these truly weighed down individuals whom have done horrors to others. And even though I know people can be loving or not loving, I understand that God has perfect filters that kick in after death for the soul. So prisons aren't the most important aspect of stopping these kinds of behaviors. I don't believe justice is something we can understand. The courts and such do not serve us justice. They simply separate those whom fall within the boundaries of their own created rules, and some of those rules appear to protect some people, but at the same time they can hurt innocent people while sweeping up the guilty ones. We need to face that the system is not perfect and continue working to evolve its positive intentions, remembering always not to allow for obvious negative actions to become the law of our society, because that only brings more self-destruction and divided people locked together. But currently, we are legalizing pedophilia by calling it another name. However, it will always remain evil. Violating an innocent child with your inability to control your sexual darkness will always be hatred. And I will always work against that kind of darkness until I die. By standing for love, we naturally stand and work against the opposite of it. To know what your work truly is starts with how you understand God and action, because there are some people who think God is not here but coming back, or that he is destruction and hatred for those deemed guilty by their shared views of unforgivable actions. This thought process leaves one living in a hell-type view of this place and unable to fully accept the blessings others can bestow upon them with love because they believe it's gone and we are living in hell, or they hope hell for others for many different unloving reasons. And like themselves, they think they live in hell and that this place, this reality, belongs to hatred. But it doesn't, because it belongs to those of us who work to shine a loving light on the darkness of shadows people cast upon each other with their actions or non-actions. I can't help but see that so many people generally have good intentions but backwards practices which do not make sense, yet they haven't the urge or desire to change those things about themselves, let alone beginning to change how they see things. They rather see that others are doing wrong and need to change. They, or should I say we, do not stumble upon backwards ways of thinking. We are taught with words and actions. Who we have become shows up when we trip and fall ungracefully. So for this, not everyone can tell someone the truth about what they see of them, because sometimes we know we can't truly see ourselves, and other times we don't know. But once we come to the ability to know we are about to make a decision based upon the choices we make from the morning to the night, awareness of ourselves becomes trust in our decision-making abilities, knowing right from wrong, and that you are correct. And when we see people or races claiming to be exceptionally godly, even placing within their own society mind that they are God's chosen people, we will not deny what we see. God's chosen people are those with the least possessions, the most persecuted, and made to feel the worst, yet still maintaining the worshipful attitude and behavioral practices of being kind to others and forgiving others as well, because that's love. We must remember that thoughts shape feelings and beliefs shape our actions. Dr. Herbert Benson wrote a book called Timeless Healing: The Power and Biology of Belief. And when I read this quote below, my spirit jumped with joy in knowing that these words can encourage so many people out of every single view of hopelessness and negative thoughts or positions in life. Quote, "Some patients, though conscious that their condition is perilous, recover their health simply through their contentment with the goodness of the physician," end quote, page 35. You see, it all falls under the thought of trust. It's the most important piece of gaining peace of mind, heart, and soul. Trust is what keeps us going. Trust in ourselves can save our lives. We must also remember that calling ourselves by a religious title or even maintaining a specific ritual of habits will not mean you are closer to God than another who might happen to prefer to not call themselves by a religious title or to go to a church or practice the same habits, because God is in everyone. Some just know it more than others. Those that know something you may not know should be listened to and respected. And if we feel anger forming within and start wanting to not hear what's being said, or our initial feelings stirred up our negative ones, that's called cognitive dissonance. It's what happens when you cannot be okay with others differing from you and your opinions. Some become angry, because anger is a resulting emotion of not wanting to be seen in comparison to whatever light is being shown on them. And we all know practicing hiding anything at all is doing what we know is wrong. And that's why words and how we choose to believe are extensively important to us and our psyche, to our development of understanding what things are good and what are evil. Love is sacrifice, but not the perverted and faltered type of sacrifice which so many confuse for literal instead of the metaphorical. Example, to kill and put the self aside means to kill the self-serving nature over the actions of unconditional giving. However, some believe they should commit suicide in order to be a kind person. They believe the hateful thoughts from the mind saying you are a horrible person and should take yourself out of the equation altogether because that's what would be best for everyone, right? Wrong. Allow me to further explain. Just as a public school teacher must have a plan in order to assure success of teaching, so has God a lesson plan for each of us in each of our respective lives. After going through so many issues and problems with just about everything, I came up with a process I follow when feeling super upset about having to face something I did. First step is acceptance. Admittance to myself that I did wrong, and even if I think I wasn't the one wrong, I'm here in this, and somehow I must get through it or die. Second step, accept the need for this lesson. Third, plan out the approach for living through the consequences of said lesson. Fourth, identify the pain and fear, but do not become a part of it. Allow it to flow past. Cry if you need to and speak out loud. Stop feeling like I'm going to die in this. Identify the coming consequences and envision how to live through them. See myself accepting them and work through them. Recognize myself in the equation. Change from the old ways which put me in need of the lesson in the first place. Trust in what I know about how love is molding me in reality, and then take a deep breath and remind myself that I am an agent of God and move forward. Fifth, the test. Clean yourself up and begin walking with the new you who now knows way more than before. Sixth, the confirmation. Knowing who you are is trusting that you walk in love. Seventh, the practice. Now go on into your life and apply all you've learned. Be humble. From this breakdown, I know that no matter how bad things can get, no matter how much they truly hurt, I must trust in the lesson plan, because if what I want is to learn, then learn I shall indeed. And I want to learn to be more understanding when I see problems so that I can do my best at approaching and presenting the possible solutions. I was lying in bed one day telling my middle daughter how scared I was of the future because, as much as I hate lies and lying, I had lied about a few things in fear of possible outcomes from telling the truth. And so I knew that my suffering was in fact a cause of my inability to trust in truth. And so I chose to lie. And now I have to go through this lesson and its consequences and face the reality I laid out for myself. And it's freaking scary, man. I was really afraid of what will come of it because I felt I'd basically taken my armor of truth off and left my entire soul exposed to the terrifying darkness within reality. And this fear I was experiencing came because I chose to not trust in God. She told me that it sounded like I was going through a car wash, and suddenly I envisioned this whole process and started describing to her my view of her analogy. So imagine that in life, everyone is driving inside cars. Our bodies are our cars, and with us here is an ancient knowledge of a love spirit whom will literally drive the car for us if we want it to. This spirit of love was here as a human man for a short time, so most people refer to it as him, and he is known as Jesus. Now, if I won't choose to also know this knowledge and so refuse to let Jesus drive and instead say, "No, Jesus, truth, I got this. I'll drive myself to where I need to go." I'm choosing to drive myself head first, straight off the side of the road, off his desired path for me. And when I do this, I will always end up getting all kinds of dirt and filth on my car in the process, getting into accidents, caught in ditches, etc. The fact is, I'm all banged up and end up stuck on the side of the road crying because I'm afraid, until he again reminds me to just let him drive. But once he drives me, he first has to take me through the car wash to get all the filth off, and I have to pay for that wash. And to my sad, desperate, fearful mind, the wash symbolizes the consequences unavoidable. But then he reminds me that he already paid for me and there's actually nothing to worry about. Let's just get going. And so I get out of the driver's seat and he begins driving me again. Does that mean as long as I invite the spirit of love back into my life, I won't have to face any consequences of what I've done to myself when I decided to take the wheel? No, it just means I won't be alone through the whole process of learning how he will get me out and clean me up and strengthened by the forgiveness of my own faults. This is why I need to make sure to just let him drive me always, because every single time I decide I'll drive myself and do what I want, I'll come to find that my driving capabilities on this highway of life are nothing compared to the one who created the highway in the first place. And if I won't choose to look at love to drive me, the sadness I feel when facing that my children were in the back seat of my car the whole time, and my detour hurt them too, and now they see the pain and to suffer from my choices to do as I wanted versus what love would want me to do, will mold me into a humbled individual going through the car wash again and again. And with this teaching, I'm learning that each time I choose to do as I want, my children will have to go through the results with me. Therefore, my choices led to pain for my children. And though I can ask for comfort from God and feel comfort in my turmoil of facing what I've done, I can never change what I've done. And now I'll just have to see that I hurt my own children with choices I made in my life. I will now have to live on with that knowledge of what I did. I will have to seek shade from my Father's tree of forgiveness. Jesus is my tree of forgiveness. And going through this is what it's like to live with the tree of knowledge, because the tree of knowledge is the brain. And with my new choice to stop obeying myself and start doing what I know to be loving, I'll be able to live through this guilt-turned gratitude, feeling gratitude for the ability to no longer spend my lifetime hurting myself or my loved ones. Yeah, so I need to make sure I'm really careful in this car, because this journey is an assignment and I have a responsibility to those I love and myself. I've got to be disciplined in doing what I know is right and stop causing us all pain and more unnecessary suffering. When I was done telling my analogy story, I looked over and my little baby was sound asleep. Go figure. My sweet little baby fell asleep in the back seat as I learned my lesson. I finally realized why our outlooks are so imperative to our day-to-day interactions, approaches, and choices to each other. While some may choose to launch attacks or bombs at us, we choose to prepare by caring enough to tread lightly, making an effort to understand other people. This action is in preparation for loving them without conditions, the way God wants us to love, one step at a time. People may or may not know they are attacking you, but being ready is the key to being able to withstand those attacks, those occurrences. We can literally come out of attacks unscathed. This applies greatly to our work fields, our careers, and our family life. For me and my work, the most amazing masseur can give his very best to an unappreciative person whose aim is to find things to not enjoy during the session, and yet that person probably treats life in the same approach. But I won't absolutely know that for sure, so I'd have to simply respond without being offended or taking their inability personally, and know that how I respond to them is completely my responsibility. I'm not here to test their abilities. I'm here to train mine. So I simply need to keep this in mind and have complete trust in my work by knowing my approach is always filled with care, and take this as an opportunity to show how I can remain kind in the face of this negativity. In the face of this attack, I can think behind it and see with compassion instead of annoyance or anger. This practice of doing my best so I will know my work is always good keeps me from self-doubt. When I know me and what I practice, I know you and what you practice, and my response can always be the same: love and understanding. This is why massage is an aspect of life, a necessary for life commodity, not luxury. For how can it be that touch is reserved for those with money to pay for it? Like if nurturing things of God are luxuries only for those with much. They're not. I know that I have a lot to give, so I can give much, and those with much should give much, or commit to greed and waste away in it. Humans not only need touch, we crave it. Did you know the word of means connecting value to one whole and one part? It's the connector relationship, the complete fulfillment of a necessary and healthy relationship. If a single word with only 2 letters can represent the very element and only way in which one completes another, and is so obvious that it can be removed and the 2 words that it connects will still make sense as to what they are to do with each other, the relationship is quite strong. Massage, when viewed properly, is generally the glue that holds the aspect of sanity together with self-care. Have you ever wondered what makes crazy glue crazy, or how the reasoning of crazy is being depicted as strong in this term? Hold on. So if an individual's mind and behavior can be referenced as crazy in a negative essence, such as to be violent, unbalanced, or unhealthy minded, then we are the crazy glue to ourselves. It means crazy is necessary and so exists for a positive reasoning. This view transforms into the gate of relief from strenuous tension and pain. We are the crazy glue holding our minds' lives together with ourselves unto our very own spirit. But used against another or pushed out onto others is when it turns negative. So control is the key, because crazy is good when properly applied. The notion of massage as a healer is much more involved with the spiritual aspect of internal health. I find myself reflecting, sitting at my mind's table, working to achieve a strong, loving, and knowledgeable attitude and ability to respond to all negative situations or people with thoughtfulness, and weighing all the necessities of words and proper gestures against understanding of truth and application to my life, with an ability to reassure myself that I have made another great effort to not respond in negativity or take their negativity into myself either. However, this reflection reminds me that if I choose to avoid this patient self-reflection and not perform this action, I am only leading myself down or out and away from that uppity feeling of optimism and those much-needed views of beauty amongst the darkness that shadows and decays through spiritual stagnation. It's so very close, always right outside my door, knocking, beckoning for me to just follow it or jump quickly without thought and consideration for if I'm being loving or not. But hey, that's good, because the presence of this fact reminds me of where I am, and to be careful always, because maybe your opponent, this challenger who beckons you to open that hasty door, has just been having a bad day, or may have been thinking or speaking negatively to themselves, and they could be familiar with creating walls of definitive self-dislike. And so they use those walls to enclose themselves into a cocoon of misery. And then, when they come out, they naturally cast a heavy shadow upon others. From this negative daily practice, they may receive false happiness and begin wanting to see others miserable like them, not able to understand why happy people annoy them, or why they feel empty and jealous of another's joy. False happiness is the smile on a killer's face. It is a choice. But the ability to make that choice is the truest example of why we are allowed to choose. For if you could not possess the ability to choose the negatively false thing, you'd simply be a prisoner of the positive. And that's exactly why we're allowed to choose to bring bad things which will occur in our lives. This is the exact reason that evil exists, and we maintain the knowledge of it, good and evil. It perfectly identifies the opposite, which is goodness. So you can know for sure that you are not, I repeat, not imprisoned to God or life. We choose life daily. It would greatly benefit your thinking to stop thinking that you are in a prison. Fight it. This place is a battlefield, but we're able to fight for the right side, the love side. And on this side, we can experience more than a war in existence. We can start over again with the new mind of viewing the battle as our necessary duty to help people, to love people away from the clutches of hatred, to serve each other, to serve people even when they're annoying or really dumb or behaving in an evil way. People are everywhere. There's no getting away from them. There's even one walking with you right now. You. And sometimes you may think that you are it, but you're not. I promise. You're just with it. And yes, at times it's hard to deal with it, just about as much as it's difficult to deal with the ones that belong to others. Minds are a part of those bodies too. Remember this, the clever little beast of a thing called the mind indeed maintains a want, and it wants and has ways of troubling you and me with that thing it uses to push thoughts and fears into us, and even lies, because it is the brain. But just like crazy can be used for good, so can your brain. So you must maintain complete control over it, or it will in fact control you, and suffering will ensue. Losing control over the mind is a gradual binding and tying, like the tying of a self-tightening knot, which strengthens its grip with every little movement. This is why the things of spiritual teachings seem like a psychological feat for comprehending, because our brains want to attain riches and live lavishly with much sparkle to surround us, with the goals of convincing us that this reality is all there is to existence. But your spirit knows you're here to work, and sparkles are not profound. You exist because you are greatly needed. Serve others and help them too. That's profound. Be careful, because that mind of yours knows we can't help another very much if we can't first figure out why we should do such a thing, and how such actions are extremely imperative to our day-to-day lives. And sometimes it can make us think that a life view of self-service is good, but first it argues us into agreement with that thought, then motivates our actions or non-action, making us think that a life of service to others is negative or counterproductive, and even mighty stupid or foolish. And then we look around at others for an example so as to see why they live their way. And from the outside, they look like they have so much and must be happy, but our eyes lie to us, because those silly little eyes can't see the importance of spiritual understandings, because they're just fallible eyes, capable of losing their very purpose, which is to serve us in order to serve others. But still, so many trust in those eyes and ears which only translate the things of physical reality. So many people only believe what they see and hear with their physical bodies and physical minds. But remember, all of life and what we each give or take from it is orchestrated by how we view and approach each and every aspect of life in general. Basically put, what we believe determines our views just as much as what we accept as a fact containing physical evidence determines our understandings. My life experience leads me to understand that belief is the stance we keep along with the acceptance of others standing against it. Because regardless if others may or may not agree with your beliefs, those beliefs belong to you for self-empowerment. And if something you can't understand is unbelievable, maybe it's first because you refuse to accept the fact that others can understand it and in turn believe. So make sure to respond in love, because you're always walking in the right directions with the right sight when you do. Even though many people would much rather accept the thought that those who do believe must be quite unintelligent, because for many, that correlation and system of order is much too complicated for their lifestyle and will possibly place a mental strain or problem for their daily life practices, and so they'd rather dismiss it as not true. Though to be honest with ourselves requires a dedication to truth. A life of practicing truth is the only way to know if you are in fact telling yourself the truth about having truly and fully attempted to understand the subjects of spirit. For how can you know if you're always telling yourself the truth if you often practice telling lies to others? To lie to yourself can only mean you let yourself down. So choose to stop now. Stop listening to negative things and instead respond by invoking love, creating love. Take another's attacks and turn them into flowers. Belief is acceptance, acceptance of truth. So many people are currently in denial, and denial will always lead to a broken mind, because to deny a fact of truth is to practice denial, and to live in denial requires repetition of an untruth. I want to help people understand the truth of God, because happier lives are possible through stronger minds which can handle the hard-to-face truths. A strong mind is a mind of God, a mind of truth, because lies created by you will hurt you, but God never wants to hurt you. God is love. I used to struggle with my acceptance of government structures that I engage with on a daily basis, yet do not understand, like taxes or military. Yet I accept that I do not understand them. I also understand that the consequences of not participating with them means I will not be able to work and pay for myself and my children and those I want to heal, because they're all within these structures too. So I have to stay. I'm not going to run away or try to live outside of it all, but I can share my views and opinions on how we can, as a society, change this thing we engage with, change these structures and government services I see were formulated within lies, built upon murder and thievery, but I forgive it all. I've come to an understanding how something that seems to work could be working for destruction more so than growth. With this, I see that our government is currently hurting children in my face by separating them from their parents, whom have brought them to my front door, to the country I was born in, and now I need to focus my attention on fixing this thing. And even though, just like the Bible, in that it was created to control people, I must too see that all things have the ability to turn into good, or be used for good, and work from there. Some people have chosen to use it for evil, to bring about their own selfish wants and wretched ways, but I will work to use it to help others and heal our nation's people's minds and hearts. Overall, it is good to never assume that hurtful or cutthroat internal opinions are present due to the exact reason your mind sums up, because sometimes those ideas are only present inside to challenge you, and reasoning that others should be like you is not quite reasonable, and maybe those people whom you think negatively against just can't feel as motivated or able as you right now, so let's go easy on each other. Let's reflect the positive in each tone, word, sentence, and approach, no matter how another may respond. Let's trust that we each are working things out and with our individual gifts, because it would be a destructive and inconvenient waste to give a child too many gifts. Yet some gifts can be used for everyone, and some are meant for only a few. Sometimes the only available positive logic to choose from for mental relief or torture with the internal unrest is the very best one to entertain at your mind's table. Go with the most simple positive reason to not become angry or overtaken. My life intention is to be loving, to be a great mother and servant of God, an individual whom heals others and helps others in the midst of learning how to walk this path, all while too struggling with personal issues. I intend to be as loving as I can know I should be. I wouldn't be in denial of lying to myself if I'm aware enough of myself to trust that I can see truth by practicing it to my utmost ability of practicing love in all my interactions and responses. When I began thinking on the Bible and dissecting each word, looking to figure out what it all truly means or what it might be telling us other than what the majority have come to accept and spread, or if it in fact does agree with what they're claiming, I found out that all the truths I needed to know in order to get me through this valley of death will come exactly in the right moment that I need to hear them. But my work is to listen close enough and then obey that direction. To obey is to trust. And now I finally trust that my intentions in attempting to understand this thing is in love. So no matter what evil it may have been created for or may be used for, I am not its subject, it is mine. At some point in my studies, I began to think about what these stories really mean, and I wondered if the story of Adam and Eve is about one single person's mind, and it's what they referred to as land. You know, like how each person is a universe within, all on their own, because we're so very different from one another. Though we look alike in our common traits, still everyone thinks differently mostly. I viewed the whole story to be speaking about one side of a person's mind and the other, male side, female side. But as a whole, it is my mind, my mental home. And that's what Jesus was meaning by building mansions, because a mansion mind compared to a broken down shack is our promised land, because mental strength is ability to choose. Can you make choices for yourself? We are, as individuals, engaging with the body we are within. Or do you think we are prisoners of our body, just watching it all go on? No ability to choose and completely overpowered, insignificant, or pointless, weak. To be mentally strong is not about not being taken advantage of or smart in the sense that you have never been fooled or by someone else or a group of people, i.e. lied to and didn't see the lie. No, true mental strength is ability, the ability to see, the ability to trust, the ability to believe, ability to respond. When Jesus died, he refused to demonstrate his abilities to Caesar. He made no response. So he was then given over to those whom hated him and demanded he no longer exist at all. This man was kidnapped by the people who worked together to control society's interactions via their beliefs of God and such, and then commanded to obey them. They are still here just as much as he is still here. He refused to obey them over God, so they killed him. But they didn't know that by killing him, they were not hiding the truth he came to share with us, because you can't kill truth. They were in fact setting it off like an atomic bomb. And while our societies are designed to view people who trust or believe in God as somehow less intelligent because they will not prove to you why they believe or what it is they believe in, other than by demonstrating how their behavior is different from yours, an undeniable fact will always remain the same. The strong-minded ones are the ones with the abilities. Yes, if someone does not have the ability to make choices or care for themselves, they are disabled. So why is it not across the board? Hence, first you make it seem bad, then you convince them they need to get rid of it, then you control them. Because if we're strong in the Lord God, we do not in fact have anything to worry about, knowing death and departure from this place is the beginning of living more somewhere else. They would rather we live in fear, because fearful animals are easy prey to the ones preying upon lives. Reincarnation can make sense when you look at whom and what those who practice the idea of YOLO, you only live once, really are. YOLO encourages wasting life and spending frivolously without thought or consideration for another. It teaches people to be quick and thoughtless, to focus on doing what you want, and that you're only here once, so you might as well do anything and everything you want to do, believing they are alone here. However, in this place there are two, you and God, your will and God's will, and God is an accountant, the Time Lord, because you do not in fact own time. This time of being alive is not given to you so you can abuse it thoughtlessly, recklessly, free of work. Work is oh so necessary. If we work only to serve our wants, then we are serving ourselves. We are pulling time itself towards us, and time is a wheel that crushes or flings. Be flung across time or be crushed by it. It's all about the care of the home, the mind, and its beliefs, so that we can learn to live rightly and not against time, but with it. YOLO is a fearful mind of desperation to grab as many memories of fun times as one can, to take as much as you can versus giving as much as you can. And those memories that seemed good become false happiness. Thoughtless treatments towards yourself and others will bring upon yourself a failed shopper in a giant store, whom at the end of it could not pay for all they'd taken into their basket, leaving only fear and guilt in the basket, and that's what costs the most. What is the charge for fear and turmoil?